Hi, I'm Brian Gusamy, and today I'm going to explain to you Black Lives Matter and their effects on sociology. The first thing that I found in my research is the conflict theory. The conflict theory is basically a theory on how the wealthy suppress the poor. In these terms, when we look at the wealthy, I consider the wealthy as the white people. In our history, we could go all the way back to Jim Crow and the laws in the South. But when we look further in time up to this movement of the Black Lives Matter, we have been suppressed with being beaten down, taken out of our cars, and being labeled as people who are thugs, who are criminals, drug dealers, and other things. But they keep pushing us down in a term of having us being lower class, as most black people aren't, though. Then the second theory that I found in my research is the labeling theory. The labeling theory is basically having context of looking at someone and labeling by their skin color or race. So when a police officer looks at a black male such as me, they look at me as a gang member, killer, a murderer, and other things like that. Which, when you really look at me, I could be a smart child who lives in a single family home, who have a really high GPA, goes to church and do many things in the community. But when a police officer looks at me, it looks at different. So let me give you some more brief information about how the come up of the Black Lives Matter movement. The first, I'm going to show you a little bit of clips on the first incident where it actually spouted out to be the Black Lives Matter with the death of Trayvon Martin.
There are major developments tonight in the case of a neighborhood watch captain in Florida who shot and killed an unarmed 17-year-old. The U.S. Justice Department has now opened a civil rights investigation, and the local prosecutor has convened a grand jury to consider criminal charges. Justice correspondent Bob Orr has the latest.
In the 3 weeks since Trayvon Martin was killed inside this gated Florida community, Neighborhood Watch volunteer George Zimmerman has maintained he shot Martin in self-defense. But attorney Benjamin Crump, who represents Martin's family, says the unarmed teenager was targeted because of his race.
Arrest George Zimmerman for the killing of Trayvon Martin in cold blood today.
Crump said on the night of the shooting, Martin was heading home from the store and on the phone with his girlfriend. In a telephone interview, the young woman told Crump she listened as Martin was suddenly confronted by a stranger. The girlfriend said she urged Martin to run away, and he responded he would walk fast. At around the same time, Zimmerman also made a call to the Sanford, Florida police to report a suspicious person in his neighborhood.
He's got his hand in his waistband. Yeah, he's a black male.
Are you following him?
Yeah.
Okay, we don't need you to do.
The death of Eric Gardner and the new slogan that the Black Lives Matter have, which is...
Good evening. For the second time in as many weeks, a grand jury has found the evidence is just not there to charge a white police officer in connection with the death of a black civilian. This time, it's in the biggest city in the nation, packed with tourists for the holiday season. These cases are wildly different and half a nation apart. This one involves the video seen around the world by now, showing a man named Eric Garner being taken down by mostly plainclothes police officers while being placed under arrest. One of the officers employed a chokehold. Moments later, while on the ground after complaining he couldn't breathe, he was dead.
So with this new movement of I Can't Breathe sprouted out, it started to make people think about what's all happening. Then you started to see more of a progression of the Black Lives Movement with different races of saying all lives matter. But the thing is, with the bottom line with everything, Black lives do matter because we're the ones who are constantly getting beat, killed for things that we're getting labeled as. Here's some more videos and more things that happened during the Black Lives Matter movements up to this year of riots and protesting. I hope you enjoy the rest of my videos and have a great day.
It exists because of this.
I can't breathe. I can't breathe.
And this. And this.
You shot 4 bullets into him, sir. He was just getting his license and registration, sir.
If it ain't gonna be no justice. When 17-year-old Trayvon Martin died at the hands of George Zimmerman in 2012, protests sprung up around the country, demanding everything from changes to Florida's stand your ground laws to gun control.
When do our children get to just be children?
But one of the protests,
Black Lives Matter,
quickly took on a life of its own. The phrase Black Lives Matter was first coined in 2013 by 3 African-American women in response to George Zimmerman's acquittal. But the term didn't gain widespread use until August 9, 2014, when Michael Brown was shot and killed by a white police officer in Ferguson, Missouri. Protesters swarmed the city, holding signs that read, "Black Lives Matter." The overwhelming police response to the protests kept the slogan in the news for days. While Ferguson began to calm down, the combination of social media, ubiquitous video cameras, and the recurrence of African-American deaths at the hands of police meant that it was only a matter of time before Black Lives Matter reappeared.
On behalf of all New Yorkers, I want to offer my deepest condolences to the family and loved ones of Eric Garner.
4 months later, when a police officer was acquitted in the death of Eric Garner, an unarmed African-American man in Staten Island who was choked to death on camera, Black Lives Matter was everywhere.
Justice for Eric Garner! Justice for Eric Garner!
In the days after Garner's death, rallies were held in 5 cities, with protesters calling themselves part of the Black Lives Matter movement. Almost a year later in Baltimore, Freddie Gray, a 25-year-old African-American man, was chased by police and later found in the back of a police van with 80% of his spine severed. Riots ensued and the damage cost an estimated $9 million.
Stand up and say loudly and clearly, Black Lives Matter.
And activists from Black Lives Matter affiliates have since confronted politicians at campaign events.
We're gonna let you on the mic. We're gonna give you the mic.
Black Lives Matter! Black Lives Matter! The online movement has taken on a life of its own. And unlike a lot of hashtag activism, the Black Lives Matter banner has generated a sustained rallying cry for change and real-world results. When the University of Missouri came under fire for failing to address persisting complaints about racism on campus, Black Lives Matter contributed to protests that toppled the school's president.
Nobody is free until all of us are free. That's the end goal.
The movement has generated some backlash, but the core argument that African Americans aren't treated equally is backed up by statistics that show that black men are killed by police at a higher rate than white men. Until those numbers change, the Black Lives Matter movement isn't likely to go away anytime soon.